Is it possible that a handwritten note, barely longer than a scrap of personal confession, could shake millions of people around the world, even more powerfully than an official statement from a global entertainment giant? This question suddenly echoed in the minds of ARMY on the final night of 2025, when Jungkook, the youngest member of BTS who has long been known for rarely speaking at length about his feelings, instead reached out in an unexpected way, almost silent, yet resonating far louder than any press conference. There was no corporate logo, no carefully measured corporate phrasing, no official statement wrapped in safe diction. There was only a sheet of light blue paper, handwritten words, a small heart symbol, and a short name at the bottom, JK. Why was this message considered deeper than an official statement from Big Hit Music? Why did ARMY describe it as something too personal to be just a New Year's greeting? And most provocatively, did Jungkook, in his own way, say something that his agency could not, or had not yet said? It all began on December 31, 2025, when a fan account named @Jimochii on the platform X shared two simple images with an almost plain caption: Jungkook New Year's Message. There was no long narrative, no speculation, no sensational claims. Yet that was precisely where the surprise lay. Within minutes, the post spread rapidly, surpassing the boundaries of ordinary fan communities and turning into a global conversation. Thousands of interactions emerged not because of any spectacular visual shock, but because of an emotional power that felt raw and honest. On that light blue paper, Jungkook wrote a message in Korean that was later translated and repeatedly quoted by fans in various languages. Hello ARMY, this is Jungkook. How are you? I miss you. My feelings are always the same. I'll continue to work hard every day as always. Please take good care of me in 2026. May you receive many blessings. At a glance, these sentences seem simple. Yet for ARMY, especially after a long hiatus due to mandatory military service, those words felt like a small window opening into Jungkook's inner world, a space that had long remained tightly closed. What made this message feel different was not only its content, but the historical and emotional context surrounding it. The year 2025 marked a crucial transition phase for BTS. After completing their military service, all members returned to civilian life, carrying with them a weight of global expectations that was nearly impossible to avoid. In such circumstances, official agency statements usually function as market stabilizers, expectation managers, and image protectors. Jungkook's message, however, moved in the opposite direction, personal, vulnerable, and as if speaking directly from one individual to another. Many fans highlighted one particular sentence: "Please take good care of me in 2026. For some, it was simply a sweet expression. For others, it felt laden with meaning. Why did Jungkook ask ARMY to take care of him, rather than merely asking for support? Was it simply a choice of words, or an emotional signal about a new phase he was about to enter? Questions like these quickly sparked long discussions, semi-academic analyses, and even psychological reflections among fans. The accompanying photo strengthened that sense of intimacy. Jungkook appeared relaxed, with long black hair framing his face, his lip piercing clearly visible, without excessive makeup or a glamorous concept. This was not the image of an idol shaped by a large creative team, but the portrait of someone who seemed comfortable being himself. Many ARMY described the photo as honest, a word rarely used in an industry as meticulously curated as K-pop. Reactions poured in relentlessly. The reply section filled with expressions of love, longing, and even virtual tears. One fan wrote, "Please take good care of me," reversing Jungkook's words as if to say the relationship was reciprocal. Another called Jungkook precious with a sad emoticon, not out of pure sadness, but because of an emotion difficult to articulate. Others wrote only in capital letters, "We love you, Jungkook," as though no other sentence could contain what they felt. It was at this point that comparisons with Big Hit Music's official statements began to surface. Not because Big Hit had done something wrong, but because the contrast was so stark. Agency statements, however important, are almost always framed in institutional language, full of caution, and often emotionally distant. Jungkook's message, by contrast, did not attempt to explain plans, did not confirm a comeback, and did not explicitly promise anything. Yet precisely because of that, many ARMY felt it was deeper. It did not speak about schedules or strategies, but about feelings that were always the same. This phenomenon opened a broader discussion about the relationship between idols, agencies, and fans in the post-military era of BTS. Are we witnessing a shift in communication styles? Is Jungkook, consciously or not, reaffirming his identity as an individual rather than merely a component of an industrial machine? Or is this simply an emotional moment magnified by ARMY's collective longing? What is certain is that this New Year's message did not stop as a simple greeting. It became a symbol, a trigger for hope, and even a source of ongoing interpretation. For fans in Indonesia, one of the largest ARMY bases in the world, the message was celebrated with extraordinary enthusiasm. Social media was filled with reposts, translations, and personal prayers addressed directly to Jungkook. Hopes for a Southeast Asia tour, a BTS comeback, or a new solo project resurfaced, even though there had been no official confirmation from Big Hit Music. Here lies the greatest surprise of all. A message not intended as an announcement felt more meaningful than an announcement itself. A handwritten note, perhaps written in silence, had now become the center of global attention. And a question lingered still unanswered. Was Jungkook opening a new chapter? Not only in his career, but also in the way he speaks to the world. That question will likely continue to haunt ARMY, at least until 2026 truly unfolds. And perhaps therein lies the true strength of this message. It does not provide definitive answers, but leaves emotional clues that make anyone who reads it feel included, invited, and in the quietest way possible trusted. If Big Hit Music's official statements over the years have functioned as a compass guiding public expectations, then Jungkook's New Year message felt like a voice coming from the opposite direction, not offering directions, but instead inviting everyone to pause for a moment and simply feel. This is where the paradox lies that has left ARMY torn between tenderness and unease. Why did a message that was never designed as an announcement end up triggering more intense discussion than the agency's official release? Within the ecosystem of South Korea's entertainment industry, every word spoken by a top-tier idol usually passes through strict layers of curation. The language used tends to be neutral, safe, and carefully measured. Big Hit Music's official statements during BTS's post-military service transition reflected this pattern, focusing on schedules, general plans, and reaffirmations that everything would be announced in due time. Jungkook's message, however, did not follow that logic. He did not wait for the corporate version of the right time. He chose an emotional moment, the turn of the year, when reflection and longing converge. This is why many ARMY describe the message as deeper. Not because it contains secret information, but because it reveals a layer of humanity rarely visible in official communications. When Jungkook wrote, "My feelings are always the same," some fans interpreted it as a statement of emotional continuity. Amid major changes, growing older, transitioning from soldier back to idol, and facing the weight of global pressure, he emphasized one thing that remained unchanged: his feelings toward ARMY. That sentence sparked analyses that were almost academic among fans. Some linked it to theories of parasocial attachment, while others viewed it as an unconscious form of emotional communication strategy. Yet for many ARMY, such theories felt too cold. What they felt was far simpler, yet far stronger. An admission of longing unwrapped from industry jargon. Interestingly, the message also raised sensitive questions about the boundary between individual and institution. Big Hit Music, as an agency, bears a major responsibility to protect its artists from excessive expectations. But when Jungkook spoke directly to fans without intermediaries, it created the impression that he was reclaiming control over his own narrative. Was this a sign of artistic maturity, or merely a spontaneous emotional outpouring? There is no single answer, and it is precisely this uncertainty that keeps the message under discussion. Reactions from ARMY across the world show that the message touched different emotional layers. In South Korea, some fans highlighted the simplicity of the handwritten note as a symbol of sincerity. In Western countries, many focused on the translated English words that felt direct and personal. Meanwhile, in Indonesia, reactions tended to be collective and expressive. Hashtags related to Jungkook and his New Year message trended, accompanied by narratives of hope, prayers, and a sense of pride mixed with longing. This phenomenon reveals something often overlooked in industry analysis. The relationship between Jungkook and ARMY has moved beyond a promotion confirmation pattern. It operates in an emotional realm that is difficult to measure with traditional metrics. More than 10,000 views in a short time are just numbers. What is more significant is the lasting resonance, the discussions that did not fade after 24 hours, and the feeling that this message was not finished after a single reading. Many fans also compared this message to earlier moments in Jungkook's career. From his debut days as a quiet magne to his solo phase with the album Golden, which showcased a more mature and daring side, Jungkook has been known to express himself through music rather than lengthy words. For that reason, his choice of handwritten text felt like a small deviation that carried great meaning. It was as if he were saying that there are things that cannot be represented by songs or grand stages. On the other hand, the absence of confirmation from big hit music only amplified the impact of the message. The agency's silence created an empty space that was quickly filled with speculation, hope, and emotional interpretation. Would Jungkook return with a solo project? Would BTS reunite as a full group soon? Or would 2026 become a year of deeper individual exploration? Jungkook's message did not answer these questions, but it provided emotional fuel to keep asking them. There is also a subtler yet equally important aspect. The message appeared amid collective fan fatigue after years of waiting. Military service, hiatuses, and uncertainty had left ARMY in a fragile emotional state. In this context, a single warm message could feel like an anchor. And perhaps this is why many felt that Jungkook's message was more than just a New Year's greeting. It arrived precisely when it was needed, not when it was planned. As the night turned into a new year and the fireworks faded, Jungkook's message remained on timelines, reread, saved, and shared again. It became a kind of emotional artifact, a reminder that behind the massive industry and global expectations, there is still an individual who chooses to say, "I miss you." And perhaps for ARMY, that sentence, in its simplicity, is the most honest form of communication. But this story is not yet finished. In fact, this is where its narrative tension intensifies. If this message truly is deeper than official statements, what are the consequences for the future relationship between Jungkook, big hit music, and ARMY? Are we witnessing the beginning of a new communication pattern, or merely an emotional moment that will be remembered as an exception? Those questions will find their answers not in a single post, but in Jungkook's next steps. And as 2026 truly begins, one thing is certain. A short message has changed how many people perceive silence, words, and the meaning behind them. As the echoes of Jungkook's New Year message continued to roll across timelines, one realization slowly settled in the minds of ARMY. This was no longer merely about a New Year's greeting, but about how a new narrative was being formed, not by press releases, not by press conferences, but by collective emotion born from meaningful silence. It was at this point that Jungkook's message began to be treated not as text, but as a symbol. Many fans began to read the message as if it were an early clue to a chapter not yet fully written. The sentence, "I'll continue to work hard every day as always," sounded like a promise, but not one bound by contract. It mentioned no album, no dates, no tour. It simply affirmed the continuity of his work ethic, as if to say that whatever form his return might take, it would emerge from a sincere process. For ARMY, who had waited so long, this statement felt more reassuring than overly specific promises that might ring hollow. It was here that comparisons with big hit music's official statements surfaced again, this time in a more reflective tone. Many fans began to realize that the functions of the two were indeed different. Agency statements are necessary for industry stability, while Jungkook's message functioned as an emotional bridge. But when that bridge felt sturdier than the official structure itself, a critical question arose. Has the modern entertainment industry drifted too far from its human side? This discussion grew beyond the fandom and entered the realm of popular culture observation. Some analysts describe the moment as an example of how a new generation of public figures builds direct communication that blurs traditional boundaries between artist and institution. Jungkook, in this sense, was neither opposing his agency nor fully hiding behind it. He chose the space in between, a space that is ambiguous, emotional, and deeply human. Reactions from fans in Indonesia became a powerful reflection of this dynamic. Many wrote long reflections about growing up alongside BTS, about how the military hiatus felt like a pause in their own lives, and about how a single short message could rekindle a sense of closeness that had long been restrained. Hopes for a Southeast Asia tour, especially in Indonesia, were no longer merely entertainment wishes, but symbols of reunion after a long period of waiting. Yet behind that hope, there was also an awareness of the risks of excessive expectation. Some ARMY began reminding one another not to burden Jungkook with overly heavy interpretations. After all, the message was a New Year's greeting, not a manifesto. This awareness, in fact, reflected the maturity of a fandom shaped by years of experience with BTS, where love and support also mean giving space. Interestingly, Big Hit Music chose to remain silent. There was no clarification, no reinforcement, and no reframing of Jungkook's message. This silence could be read as strategy, or as a quiet acknowledgement that the message truly stood on its own. In a world that moves fast and demands instant clarification, the decision to say nothing became a statement in itself. As the first days of 2026 unfolded, Jungkook's message was no longer viral in the traditional sense, but it continued to live on in deeper conversations. It became an emotional reference point, a small turning moment that would be remembered when Jungkook eventually returned to the stage, released new work, or spoke to fans again. When that time comes, many will look back at this message and say, the clues were there from the beginning. And perhaps that is where the greatest surprise lies. That something so simple, almost trivial, could become the emotional foundation of a new phase. That amid the noise of the industry, a handwritten note on light blue paper could speak louder than any official statement. And that ARMY, with all their interpretations, hopes, and caution, are witnessing the beginning of a narrative that was not announced, but felt. As this message truly deeper than Big Hit's official statements? The answer may never be final. But one thing is undeniable. For millions of ARMY around the world, Jungkook's message has done something rare. It made them feel seen, remembered, and invited to step into a new year together, without excessive promises, without overwhelming spotlight, only with a quiet honesty that continues to resonate.